All right, folks, welcome to another episode of NRG Unplugged. My name is Max Khan, and joining me today is not Casey Loftman. I've got the defending champion of the Nerd Rage Gaming Championship Series, Ben Meine, with me today. Ben, how's it going?
What's up?
Well, you know what's up. Another episode of NRG Unplugged. So let's get started here.
Classic.
We've got a whole plethora of topics today. And the first things first is the Aether Revolt pre-release.
Super exciting. I'm super happy for you, man. That must have been an awesome experience.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't follow me on Twitter, which is a mistake, I got to go to Wizards of the Coast this past weekend to hang out at the Super Sunday series and play in an Aether Revolt pre-release, and it was the most fun I've ever had playing Magic. Like, getting this hands-on experience with these cards that you know that the 50 people in the room are the only 50 people that have played with this set before was great. And we were all figuring out the new cards, the new mechanics, and there was a lot of like good discussions like on the bus ride back to the after party. Yeah, we were all like talking about, oh, what do you think of that good 4-mana blue common, or what do you think this removal spell is like? And it was fun because nobody else had like evaluated the cards yet. So it was just our first initial impressions, and it was awesome.
For sure. And it wasn't only just just the sheer fact that it was an early pre-release. It was an early pre-release with fantastic Magic players, and that's what I thought was super cool, and that you got to experience that, that whole first-hand experience with pros at a pre-release, because no one really sees pros at a pre-release, so it's interesting to see how they go about.
Yeah. So I got to deck build. I was sitting across the table of deck building with Sam Black, and we were talking a little bit about the cards in his deck, and he's like, yeah, my deck's a little weird. He had 2 Scrap Trawlers, which is the rare that brings artifacts back. So he was playing like a mono black artifact deck that I think showed up on camera a little bit later. But it was fun talking with him about what cards he thinks were good, especially for his deck. That he said, yeah, like Universal Solvent is that 1-mana artifact. You can blow up a permanent for 7. And he said, yeah, that card's pretty good in this deck, but it's pretty crappy
otherwise. That's how I kind of like felt about that card as well. But yeah.
So that was the Aether Revolt pre-release. It was a total blast. I'm so happy and thankful to Pastimes and to Wizards of the Coast for having me. And I hope to be back soon at the WotC headquarters.
Yeah, I've always wondered what that event would be like, and the fact that they streamed it too is pretty sweet. So you can always check that out at twitch.tv/magic and look at their past broadcasts and whatnot, and that's cool too. Oh man, it would have been sweet to see you in a feature match, Max, I tell you.
All right, let's move on now. Our second topic for today is the big news that we got Monday morning.
Right.
5 cards were banned. You want to tell us a little bit about what this means for Magic, Ben?
So the thing is, Standard hasn't really seen a Standard ban in quite a long time, like almost 10 years it's been. So here we are banning 3 cards from Standard, and that's a huge impact on just the morale of the community. And we've seen that if you look at social media, and for example, if you, who is watching this video, if you follow social media with Magic and whatnot, and you're on discussion groups, or you're just looking at, your friends' walls, on Facebook, and just see the uproar that this ban has had, you'll know that this is pretty impactful. So if you don't know already, which I'm sure you do, it was Reflector Mage, Smuggler's Copter, and Emrakul the Promised End that were banned in Standard, and then also 2 cards in Modern, Gitaxian Probe and Golgari Grave Troll. This is the banning that is going to be starting a revolution, I believe, with Wizards, and I believe we'll be seeing more Standard bans like this coming in the future, because this is just remarkable, and this is obviously a first step for them, because they haven't touched anything like this since Jace the Mind Sculptor. So
yeah, what I think is critical to understand about this ban is this was their first in what they're calling their new way of evaluating the ban list. So they said that starting now, the ban list, instead of being updated 4 times a year at the new set release, is going to be updated 8 times a year. So right before all the pre-releases, and then 5 weeks after each Pro Tour. And that'll help them get a better grasp on the metagame and allow them to take Pro Tour results into account when they're talking about bans. So that, I think, is the big takeaway. Like, yes, Emrakul and Smuggler's Copter are busted. We get it. But the big takeaway is that Wizards was receptive about the community complaints about these cards, and they're actively doing something to change it.
Right, and that's something that I noticed too. But the thing is, those complaints were based off of like the last rotation, like the last format. So it's not quite, or possibly, not quite where we're at right now with Standard. Like Reflector Mage and Smuggler's Copter, that was like what, 3 months ago, 4 months ago of Standard that people were complaining about that back when like Blue White Flash was dominating the format. When it was competing up there before Marvel was a deck. So it's probably the week before the Atlanta Invitational is probably the format that they're probably responding to. But once Marvel was introduced, Emrakul became a huge problem, and that's probably why they ended up banning Emrakul too. But at that point, Reflector Mage wasn't that important. I could see Smuggler's Copter because it was a 4 of in like 6 different decks. So it's like pretty it's a fine thing to do if you want to restrict the amount of that card. But Reflector Mage is kind of strange to me, and that's really what people have been pointing at too on social media, that Reflector Mage just
all right.
No
I've got a good
coming.
argument for Reflector Mage.
Okay,
Ready?
hit me.
So when the ban list announcement came out, everyone said, "Oh, they're announcing this emergency ban list. They're gonna be banning one piece of the Felidar Guardian Saheeli Rai combo." That's what everyone figured, and everyone figured it would be Felidar Guardian, right?
Yep.
Neither of those cards were banned. The card that
Right.
was banned was Reflector Mage, because what I assume is playing a turn 3 Reflector Mage, bouncing a creature, and then playing a turn 4 Felidar Guardian, bouncing your Reflector Mage and bouncing one of their creatures, and then comboing off on turn 5, isn't fun.
No, I'm sure that's awful. I'm sure that's miserable.
And I'm sure that came up in playtesting once they spoiled Felidar Guardian, and everyone's like, wow, this combos with Saheeli. I assume WotC did some sort of internal playtesting to figure out if anything needed to be emergency banned, and they found out that maybe the Saheeli twin deck is fine, but Reflector Mage was the card that was the problem.
Yeah, that's probably possible because the Saheeli combo seems like it's either a turn 4 or a turn 6 deck, holding up negate. Could be turn 5 if you want to play Dispel too, but it seems like the more fair part of that deck would have been a little too unfair with Reflector Mage, and I can see that argument. That's a fair argument. It's still unusual though in the vacuum of Standard. So, do
you want to talk a little bit about the modern changes as well?
Well, yeah, that's pretty big. Dredge decks now have to go to. We're gonna start with Golgari Grave Troll because that one's a little less strange, Yeah. But Dredge decks have to go to Golgari Thug now to really compete still in the format. They might go to a more fair strategy. I saw Tom Ross talking on Twitter about this exact line, that the Dredge decks are now going to be wanting to play Golgari Thug and play a Golgari Thug game plan. And what I mean by that is be playing more of a Bridge from Below and Greater Gargadon strategy, going back to that, because what you can do is you can sacrifice your Golgari Thug and put your Narca maybe on top of the library and then dredge it. So like that's a cool interaction that people have been doing. That's what they were doing back when Justin O'Keefe won that Standard Classic and put Dredge back on the map way back when. And that's what they're probably going to go back to. It's not going to be nearly as explosive, of course, because dredging 6 is not dredging 4, but still I think the deck will be played. It'll still require some sideboards to really handle it, and that's ultimately the reason why they made the ban in the first place, because it just had a huge impact on sideboards. Decks like Jund and decks like Bad Eldrazi had like 5 to 8 slots in their sideboard for it, so that's a little much. So they wanted to try and make the deck a little less of a threat. And then you have the other card, Gataxian Probe. This one is something that people saw coming. I mean, it's an interesting way to say that, but people have cracked the code because they knew that Infect would get free wins sometimes because they'd Gataxian Probe their opponent and kill them on turn 3 because they had nothing. And that was unfair. But in fact, it wasn't the only deck to get hurt by this. There was also, the Grixis Delver strategies, the Blue-Red Delver strategies. Storm is now
once again
unplayable.
Every time they ban a card, it's like, yeah, this makes Storm a little bit worse. but it was never good ever. So
It started with Eidolon of the Great Revel. I learned that the hard way. Because I actually played Storm back. That was like my first Modern deck or whatever. And that was when Eidolon. And then I played, and then Eidolon got printed. And then someone played Burn against me. And I was just like, well, that's cool. That was great. But yeah, Catexy Probe was banned. That's anything Phyrexian mana needs to be discussed. Mutagenic Growth and Gut Shot are still fair. But, you know, we're still saying that looking at your opponent's hand and drawing a card for 0 mana is not fair. And I would agree. That's not very fair.
It also
so
hurts the Suicide Zoo decks a lot.
Yep.
Because one of the interactions that was really cool in that deck is playing a Mishra's, what's it called?
Mishra's Bauble.
Mishra's Bauble, looking at the top card of your library and then drawing it with a Probe if you like it. But now instead of playing 8 copies of Probe with the 4 Street Wraith, you only get the 4 copies of Street Wraith. So that strategy becomes a little worse. Mishra's Bauble becomes a little worse.
I mean, that card sucks.
You can't deal yourself as much damage. So the deck just kind of falls apart.
I don't think it falls apart. I think it's still playable, but it's definitely not as consistent. And there's no probing your opponent and then just going for it if they don't have it. Like, it's the same thing. And that's fine. Like the deck can exist because it is beatable, because it doesn't play very many protection spells actually. So like it's very weak. I don't want to say weak to a Terminate, but like cards like Terminate, cards like Path Exile really do get the creatures. So taking away that aspect of going for it if they don't have anything makes it fine to play against, because you can just bluff it, because their creatures are so high value to them anyway. But yeah, that's the ban list. I think that encompasses the modern part. But if we go back to the standard and we talk about the fact that Emrakul was banned, I think standard is still going to be playing these Marvel decks. I don't think people are going to stop playing these Marvel decks. And I think it's going to be 4 Ulamogs, some number of World Breakers, and whatever else people want to throw into the boat.
You don't think that Kozilek is good enough? I mean, drawing 7 cards is great.
Well, you don't draw 7. You probably draw 3.
Yeah,
you draw 3 cards, but
and countering spells is great. Discard a Marvel to counter a Nahiri.
Right. It really does hurt that those decks don't have Emrakul anymore. But 4-mana Emrakul was just not fair. So that's simply why it was banned. 4-mana Ulamog, though, I think is playable. So I think that's a fair strategy.
All right, you heard it here first from Ben Meine. 4-mana Ulamog is playable in Standard.
Yeah, that's me. That's my word. Although I do think the top 3 decks will be Joe Lissette's Pummeler deck. I think it'll be the Shahili deck, and I think some mid-range tempo strategy that plays, the new mana leak will be a top strategy.
All right, well, let's move on to the next topic, which is our GP Louisville review. All right, so GP Louisville was this past weekend with Reed Duke winning the event with a Sultai Good Stuff deck. And we've seen a lot of cards from Conspiracy actually in this event, such as Leovold, Emissary of Trest, was in multiple decks, and Palace Jailer also made the top 8. Ben, what do you think about the addition of these cards in Legacy format, and what did you think about the results of the GP in general?
So there's a reason Leovold is now $50. The card is really fantastic. The fact that you can just draw a card for basically anything your opponent does is remarkable. And it's a 3/3 for 3 that has relevant static text. So, oh my god, the card is great. I love it so much. If I had enough money to play Sultai, I'd definitely be playing that card. But Sultai is probably the most expensive, 3-color combination in the Legacy. Regardless of the cost of the card itself and the cost of the 3-color combination in Legacy, I think that card is a very impactful card in Legacy because the fact that your opponent's brainstorms, your opponent's ponders, they're all limited and restricted. So brainstorm being the most played card in Legacy, huge deal. Same reason why Spirit of the Labyrinth was taken into Legacy and the Death and Taxes decks, because you could just flash in with your Aether Vial in response to a Brainstorm and get your opponent because, Brainstorm is the most powerful card in Legacy. So, now if we stay on Death and Taxes, Palace Jailer is in these Death and Taxes decks, and Palace Jailer is an interesting card indeed because it's the only card in Legacy that is being played that, enacts the Monarch, and the Monarch is super cool. It gives Death and Taxes huge axes already because most of the cards in Death and Taxes aren't inherently powerful on their own, but when you have a bunch of taxing effects, and when you increase that number with the Monarch itself, that can be very detrimental to your opponent because they already can't play their spells or do whatever. There's too many Revokers on the battlefield naming their Heritage Druid or their Sneak Attack, and their Brainstorms cost 2 mana, and their creatures enter the battlefield tapped. Like, everything is just miserable for them. So what I'm trying to say is that Palace Jailer is 4 mana, but I think the value you get from drawing a card every turn is super valuable. So that's probably why there was one copy in Craig Wesco's 75, in fact his 60. So I think Death and Taxes in itself is one of the better decks in Legacy, I do believe, even though there was only one copy in the top 32 and that copy made top 8. I think Palace Jailer did make a significant impact, as well as Leovold making an impact for Reduke's winning list.
All right, so one of the interesting things about Palace Jailer is that it isn't available on Magic Online. And a lot of the community is complaining because that's a card that has made the top 8 of both GPs, both Legacy GPs it's been legal in. And people are confused as to why such a prominent card wouldn't be on Magic Online. And they fear that it affects the results of their testing and kind of invalidates Magic Online. Have you felt the same way, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you're going to play a one card in your 60 that is super influential and new, and you want to test and see how it is impactful against the field, yeah, I would be upset about it. Like, I don't see why. Like, they have so many cards on Magic Online. The index is huge. So adding these cards would be significant.
All right. Well, GP Louisville was quite the event. It was a star-studded top 8. Craig Wesco, Reed Duke, Brian Bronduin, so many great names. Michael Majors, I think, was in that top 8 too.
Yep. Couple secret Pro Tour pros were in there too. But yeah, it was a super, super good tournament. 4 copies of True Name Nemesis were in Reed Duke's list. He played 4 copies of that card. And he played 4 Noble Hierarchs in addition to 4 Deathray Shamans. So that kind of gives an idea to what Reed was trying to get with. Turn 2 True Name Nemesis was his plan for the tournament, because he knows Death and Taxes has a hard time against it. All the fair, he knew the field was going to be all these fair 4-color Delver decks that people were playing, or Grixis Delver or whatever. People were just high on that deck, like the Snapcaster Mage and Bolt Abrupt Decay deck, Like, people were trying to play that deck, and it is a good deck, super strong, does very many powerful things. But there's not a lot that deck can do about turn 2 True Name Nemesis, and that's probably what led Reed to, making it to the finals and then ultimately winning the tournament. Because he had I would assume he had a very good Delver matchup as a whole, playing 4 True Names and Abrupt Decays, and 1 copy of Tarmogoyf was interesting to me, but that's what he ended up playing. And it also just happens to have a good Miracles matchup because Sultai has a good Miracles matchup regardless. But knowing that, I think that's what ultimately led to his victory.
All right. Well, there were a lot of people that finished just outside of the top 8 that didn't quite make it in. And there's 2 people I want to talk about. And those 2 people are Joe Lissette and Caleb Shearer. So if you guys haven't heard, both Joe and Caleb have decided to move on from Team Nerd Rage Gaming. They're both members of Team Card Hoarder now. Ben, you're a member of Team Nerd Rage Gaming. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to work with these 2 guys?
So I didn't get to interact with these guys that much. I saw them for a couple tournaments, and I talked to them a little bit. I'm a fairly recent member of the team, so I didn't get to talk to them that much. But I do know that the small interactions that I have had with them they're super nice guys. Like Joe and Kayla are both great guys. Like, and they're both great at Magic. I once actually it was at the Legacy Star City event. What was that? Baltimore. Yeah, I was playing in a Standard Classic, and Joe heard. I think I told him actually that I was playing this mono red Standard deck, and he was genuinely interested. Like I brewed it up myself. With some testing on Magic Online 5.0 to League, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this deck a shot. It's just like this mono red aggro deck, back in Blue White Flash and Black Green Delirium format. But I tried it, and Joe was interested. He came, and him and Caleb both watched me, and I was like, oh, these guys actually kind of like are interested in what I'm doing, and I really do respect them for their accomplishments. I know I kind of sound like a fanboy when I talk like that, but I do. I respect them because they both accomplished quite a bit. Caleb is a respected Storm player and Standard player, and he's got quite a few accomplishments under his belt, as does Joe. Joe has also plenty. He's locked up silver, actually, right? I think that's what he did this week, which is super cool. I'm super happy for him, and I'm super happy for both of them moving on to card hoarder. So from me to you guys, thank you so much for contributing what you did to the Team Nerd Rage Gaming, and I hope to carry on the legacy as we go. Thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate everything you guys did, and good luck moving forward.
All right, so our next topic for today is Aether Revolt. I had the opportunity to play with these cards this weekend at the pre-release, but your first chance to play with them is this weekend at the pre-release. And Ben Facebook messaged me. He's like, Max, we should do some first picks on the show. So even though you won't be drafting this weekend, it's a really good idea to get your head into that limited mindset. We're going to look at 2 packs here and just talk about what we think. So here is the first pack for you guys. And we have a pretty sick rare. It is Release the Gremlins. It costs XX red and destroys a bunch of artifacts. And then we've got actually 2 powerful uncommons in Scrapper Champion and in Treasure Keeper. Ben, what do you like looking at this pack?
So when I look at this pack, I think, oh wow, this rare has an X in it. So that means the ceiling can be very high if you draw it late in the game. But the thing is, it's relying on the artifact count. Now, in this set, the artifact count might be high. I don't know, I haven't played it that much. But when it gets to turn 7 and I draw this card, I could make, 3 goblins, destroy 3 things. That could be super impactful. It's good, but I don't know if it's what I necessarily want in my opening hand, which influences me to look at other cards in the pack. Treasure Keeper is probably the card I would at least think about. It's moderately powerful uncommon that I can keep my doors open with. I'm not really devoted to any color looking at this pack so far. I don't want to get my mind too far in because all the colors are powerful, I believe, in this format. So I don't want to get too jacked up on one color.
All right, so when I look at this pack, the first thing I think about is Scrapper Champion. That card has the opportunity to attack for 6 the turn after you play it, and it just gets better the more energy you have. It pumps itself by 2, essentially, because it has double strike. So that's likely the card I'm going to take out of this pack. I wanted to make a note, though. There's 2 cards in here that I had the opportunity to play with and against this weekend. That one of them is underrated and one of them is overrated. So the card that I think is underrated is Lifecraft Cavalry. That's the 3rd card on the bottom row there. It's 4 and a green for a 4/4 with trample, and with Revolt it gets 2 plus and +1 counters. And Revolt, I found out, is actually super easy to trigger in this format. Not only can your creature trade in combat, but there's an aura that bounces itself back to your hand. And the one I found most impressed with is Renegade Map, which just sacrifices to search your library for basic land and puts it into your hand. That card was always fantastic and triggered Revolt. It doesn't cost any mana to use the ability, so it's free. You can play your Revolt cards on curve. Renegade Map was fantastic, and I think Lifecraft Cavalry is the common that's going to benefit most from you being able to trigger Revolt. The card
that's awesome. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, the card that I think was overrated is the last one on the top row, Aether Swooper. I don't know. It's like a Storm Crow that makes a servo. And it was very underwhelming. There's a lot of good flyers in this format. There's a lot of things that generate Thopters. there's, I think, 2 white commons with flying, and there's 2 green creatures with reach. So flyers are not very good, and Aether Swooper doesn't give you enough benefit to play it. Like, I don't think I would pay 2 mana for a Stormcrow and a Servo. And every time my opponents play in it, I kind of just laughed because it seemed fine, but it turned out to just be very underwhelming.
Interesting. Well, that's not what I guess that's not what I would think. So that's good insight to have moving forward. But
Yeah.
if I were to look at the pack, and I would think about maybe a common that I would like to look at, I would actually look at the foil Shipwreck Moray that's in the pack. I think that card is super good too. But yeah, Aether Super, I can see how that is kind of overrated now that you say that. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I feel you.
So I feel like my first pick would be Scrapper Champion, second pick Treasure Keeper, third pick would be Druid of the Cowl, and my fourth pick would be Lifecraft Cavalry.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, so let's take a look at our second pack here. Ben, what stands out to you as you take a look at this pack?
So I'm looking around, seeing what has the best stock body for creatures, because I always look for creatures highly early in the game, unless it's fantastic removal spells. But here we are. I'm looking at the Winkin Raiders, the 4/3 flyer for 6, which is already, a B- at best on its own, but could be fantastic with supporting artifacts. I see Fenhauler. Fenhauler is going to be one of those cards that gets last picked to you. You get stuck with this card, and sometimes you'll actually be happy about it. But let's see, Aether Herder is super strong. That's the only one that's really sticking out. Seaworks Brawler is good if you're in a very aggressive red strategy. I don't really like too many other cards in this pack, actually. So, I mean, because Whir of Invention is not necessarily a card I want to have in my limited deck. It's not what I'm feeling, because there's no combo strategies that we're going for in limited. So, if I had to choose, I would probably take the Winkin Raiders first pick here.
I agree with you. Winkin Raiders, I only saw it in play once, and it absolutely dominated the game. 4/3 is a huge body, especially on a flyer. And the fact that it is improvised, there's a lot of cheap artifacts that you don't mind tapping. I got to tap my Prophetic Prism to improvise. I got to tap some of my servos to improvise. So that impressed me. The other card with improvise in this pack is Sweatworks Brawler. So my deck this weekend at the pre-release was like a Grixis artifact deck that made servos. And Sweatworks Brawler was actually fantastic in that deck. Now, I don't think that card is A+ quality. It's probably like a C+. But having Menace on a 3/3 is actually a faster clock than you think. And they really want to hold back their attacks to try to double block it because it will become a threat in the early game or in the late game. So I was really impressed by Sweatworks Brawler, but I think the pick here is Winkin Raiders.
Yeah, I also look at Deadeye Harpooner too, because that card is also extremely powerful, I see. But yeah, I can see Sweatworks Brawler working. Like it does have a solid enough body. It's something that I would pick in Kaladesh, so because I know the artifacts are powerful in Kaladesh. So moving forward, I can see that card being powerful, but I still would probably take Winkin Raiders over it.
All right, well, those are our 2 first picks. Ben, just looking at those 2 packs, how excited are you for this limited format?
I think it's going to be sweet. I think there's so much to do, like improvise is a really cool mechanic. Of course, I didn't play back when Convoke was a mechanic, like other than, M15 when Cord was in there, but I didn't back in the old Ravnica format is what I mean. So I don't know what the original power was like. I know a little bit about what it was like with Convoke from the M15 block, but I do look at improvise and I think, well, artifacts probably don't tap as much as creatures do, so this could be pretty powerful.
All right, well, my experience playing with this limited set has been fantastic so far. I'm really looking forward to pre-releasing this weekend, and I hope you guys come out to Nerd Rage Gaming to pre-release as well. You can pre-register right now at nerdragegaming.com, and there's VIP packages if you're into that, if you want to play just 3 or all 5 of them. make sure to sign up for the pre-release because it will be a blast.
Absolutely. I always love playing in pre-releases. It's one of my most favorite things to do, actually, because it's all casual, fun Magic, and you get to open new cards, get the cards you need for the next big event you need to play in by just, trading with your friends and whatnot. So it's always a good time. Always a good time.
All right. Well, speaking of events coming up at Nerd Rage Gaming, we're going to move into our last segment here. We're going to let you know about all the events coming up in the Chicago area soon. So, of course, we've got the pre-release this weekend, but we've got 3 big events in the next month or so here. So our first big event is the Modern CT. That is January 28th. It's the first one of the 2017 season. All of the points have reset. Ben, are you going to go and try to run it back?
I still haven't decided. I talked to a couple of my friends into here up here in Wisconsin to going to the event, and that's going to be sweet. So maybe I'll ride with them, and maybe Andy will have me in the booth. Maybe I'll play. I don't know. Haven't really decided. Haven't really made that decision yet. Thinking about it though.
Well, Ben might be there. You should be there. So make sure to come out to that Modern CT event, your first event probably, with the new ban list in effect. So don't worry about losing to a bunch of prized amalgams on turn 3 or a Glistener Elf on turn 2. I mean, of course, both of those things still might happen.
You still could do both of those things.
Hopefully less often.
Hopefully not.
Our second event coming up is the first weekend of February. It is in Gurnee, Illinois. It is the Modern SCG Regionals that we're hosting at Key Lime Cove, #SCG Water Park. We've also got
awesome.
A hotel deal where if you and 3 buddies want a hotel room, you can get one for a really good rate that comes with 4 water park passes. So, Ben.
Yeah?
Are you going to go to that event?
That event seems awesome, to be quite honest. If we're talking on the real here, if I were to go, if you told me all I had to do was pay $31.25 to go in a room, stay a night, and go to a water park, that seems pretty dope. I'm pretty into that. And then I get to play Magic too. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's just that's perfect weekend. Magic in a water park.
All right.
I love it.
Make sure to come out to that event. That one's February 4th, #SCG Water Park. And the weekend, a few weeks after that one, February 18th, is the Standard Championship Trial. So that'll be Aether Revolt Standard without Emrakul, without Smuggler's Copter, and without Reflector Mage. So if you're interested in pursuing the Championship Trial Series, make sure to attend this event and the one in January. Of course, we're doing monthly events throughout the whole year with CT Plus events and Super CTs scattered throughout that. Make sure to check out nerdragegaming.com for the complete schedule.
It's going to be a good time. Max, I love these championship trials last year, and I'm going to love them this year. I can tell you that. And now I have a little bit less pressure on my shoulders, so that means I get to enjoy them even a little bit more, which is awesome. Oh, man, I can't wait.
All right, Ben, well, it's come to that time of the show. Today, we talked about the Aether Revolt pre-release. Then we talked about the 5 cards added to the standard and modern ban lists. We talked a little about the legacy format at GP Louisville. Then we talked about the changes to the Team Nerd Rage gaming roster. We spent a little bit of time looking at Aether Revolt Limited with some first picks and drafts and some advice for your pre-release. And then we talked about all the cool events coming to the Chicagoland area soon. This is Ben Meine. Thank you so much for coming out today. He is the defending Nerd Rage Gaming champion, in case you didn't know. Is there anything else you want to say to the viewers before we sign off?
Ever since I joined the Team Nerd Rage Gaming, everything in my Magic career has just gone through the roof in as far as quality, how much fun I'm having, and I want to thank Norm and Casey Loftman, our editor and content provider here for Nerd Rage Gaming, as well as you, Max. Thank you so much for having me. I love doing all this. This is just fantastic. I hope you guys are enjoying the things that I'm saying. I hope you're enjoying the things that Max is saying. We're trying really hard to provide for you fantastic content, and I hope you guys see that, and I hope you guys can really appreciate the things we're doing, and I want to be back here again. So that's about all I got to say, Max.
All right, folks, for Ben Meine, this has been Max Kahn. Thank you for watching another episode of NRG Unplugged, and we'll see you next time.